Sean Gregory is a sports writer for Time magazine. You're a sports writer for Time, you gotta be good. I mean, that's like, Roscoe McGowan covering baseball for the New York Times back in the day, or something of that nature. Recently, it was last week, wrote a story about the college basketball corruption trials, and when the verdict came down, people were going to jail. Could that mean the end of amateurism? That's the question that Sean Gregory asked. Sean joins me now on Tri-City Sports Now. I'm Marky Billson. And I guess the theme of your story was, okay, people are going to jail because they violated amateur rules in college basketball. So how would amateurism then end if the federal government has upheld the concept of amateurism in college athletics? Sean Gregory, take it away.
Thanks, Marky. That's a great question and what we tried to get at in the story because, and you're right on. It doesn't make, and right away you're kind of like, well, the court said it's okay. What are you talking about? And the point we're making, and I spoke to some lawyers about this, is that, while this criminal case was going on, there's also a civil case that's been kicking around the courts in California where the plaintiffs are some former college players that basically is suing the NCAA on an antitrust basis and saying that the limits on compensation for college athletes that the NCAA has installed are anti-competitive and violate antitrust laws. Anyhow, one of the big arguments that the NCAA makes is that if players were paid, fans would be revolted, and business, as usual, would go down, and it would really hurt the school's bottom line. So the compensation caps that the NCAA have in place, the limits on paying players, are done for an economic reason, and that's why the NCAA argues they're not violating anti-competitive laws. They're pro-competitive. Anyway, but at the same time, you have this criminal trial, which is unearthing evidence that players get paid right now anyhow. There's this underground economy that everybody kind of knew about in college sports, and here it is out in the open in a New York City courtroom. Adidas has bagmen money sloshing around to all kinds of recruits. I think it'd be naive to think that only the schools mentioned in this court case are doing this. It seems to be it kind of exposed what everybody knew. So the NCAA's argument that the players aren't getting paid doesn't really hold water, and the argument that basically business is booming right now and players are getting paid. So if you kind of got rid of the compensation caps and had a free market, fans would not revolt because they're not revolting right now because players are getting paid. I hope I'm making some sense.
No, I hear that. Now, I'm curious about this civil trial and such, that because if it did go in the favor of, I guess, the plaintiff or something, would there be a chance that the people who are going to jail, and I think most people know about, I think it's Chuck Person, who's going to still face trial. He's the biggest name down there at Auburn. But James Gatto, Merrill Code, these guys are former Adidas reps. Christian Dawkins wanted to be a player agent. These guys were the bagmen handing players from where? Louisville, Kansas, etc. Under the table payments of a lot of money. I mean, somewhere in the neighborhood of $100,000, it seemed, to go play at various schools. And if the civil trial actually, I think, went to the plaintiff, I mean, Code and Gatto and Dawkins, have basis to get out of jail? Or, I mean, what would go on there?
Well, I think the prosecutors would argue that even if the plaintiffs prevail and college sports went to an open market, these guys defrauded the colleges because they were kind of putting forth ineligible players to schools because they were paying them. So at the time, um, I would assume prosecutors would argue that they were violating the law at the time, and if the law changes, that doesn't necessarily absolve these men from the quote-unquote crimes that they committed. You know, because I say quote-unquote a little bit because the government's making a very kind of somewhat backdoor argument. You could argue commonsensically that, hey, if a player's worth $100,000 in a market, you give $100,000, what's the crime in that?
Mm-hmm.
You know, there's no one's hurt here. But the legal argument that the government made in the criminal case was that the schools were defrauded because Brian Bowen's family got $100,000 and Louisville didn't know about it, and then so they give a scholarship to a kid who's ineligible, so they were defrauded. So they made a very kind of specific, and the strange part is they painted the schools as victims, but at the same time the NCAA can punish the schools for suiting up ineligible players. So it's just an odd head-scratching case. But I mean, to get to your question, I don't think, and I'm not a criminal lawyer, but my intuition is if the laws were to change, they still violated the laws at the time the laws were on the books, so they'd still be liable.
We're talking to Sean Gregory of Time Magazine. Last week wrote a story how the college basketball corruption verdict could help end amateurism in college athletics. And I guess the question that comes out is that I can see where people want the college football player to be paid. Look,
right.
I remember when Peyton Manning was at Tennessee, and I would go to King Vest Sports. I can say that. There's no more King Vest Sports. And I could buy a Peyton Manning jersey for $5 because all it was an orange 16 on a white mesh jersey. The reason why you couldn't license Peyton Manning's name, despite all the publicity he was giving for Tennessee, because he was an amateur athlete. I mean, that would have been, you'd have to give him a couple of ducats, and oh no, you can't do that, you know. So, in some ways, I mean, I got a cheap jersey, but I could, you know, I got a Manning jersey too. I got what I paid for in that regard. But the thing that I'm going to say is that, sure, Peyton Manning is going to bring in a lot of money for Tennessee. Somebody running track and field, not so much. So if we were going to pay the players, how would that all work?
Well, that's what people have been trying to figure out, is that the NCAA has argued that, hey, listen, how are we going to do this? We have to pay everybody equitably or the whole thing falls apart. There's also an argument, and to just bring it to the track and field example, 100,000 people are impacting the track stadium at the University of Tennessee like they are the football stadium.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like any other endeavor, kind of the revenue, the folks who are bringing the revenue get that share of the revenue, like it is in professional sports. Now, that's where people get queasy. Well, we're turning college sports into professional sports. It's pretty much professional right now. You go to, you know, you're deep in the heart of college football country. There's business and commerce flowing like crazy at these events. The coaches are paid millions of dollars. The administrators are getting rich. Everybody's profiting except for the players. Now, the players get scholarships and they get great training facilities, and that's not to say that's worth a lot. However, market, just look at this criminal trial. There was Brian Bowen from Louisville was valued at $100,000.
Mm-hmm.
There's a market for a player. Somebody decided that player was worth $100,000. You know, why shouldn't that player capitalize during a time when his earning power, not all these players are going to become NBA players. This is when they can make money off their athletic talents. So, yeah, a lot of things are kind of coming together here. I think what just strikes me is college sports are pretty much professionalized
Well, let me just play devil's advocate.
Sure.
Okay, I'm the AD at Tennessee. I'm Phil Fulmer. All right, now, and I say, okay, if we do it this way, how do I have to now, because of Title IX, pay the women's basketball player as much as I do Grant Williams? Do I have to pay the track and field athlete as much as I do the football player? That sort of thing. Do I have to drop track and field and softball and those sports because maybe they aren't bringing in the money, and the NCAA has to go to, instead of requiring every college program to have 16 sports, okay, yeah, Tennessee, you can get away with just having a football and a basketball program and paying them and all that. Hey, who are we kidding here? Let's get rid of those sports that are just exit. Swimming, who needs it? Nobody watches it. I mean, wouldn't that be the result?
I don't think so, and that's what the NCAA argues. There's plenty of money going around at the biggest places, and by the way, nobody's saying you have to pay players, right? Some schools might, and then you'll say, well, then Alabama will get all the good players if they're paying players. But Alabama pretty much are the best players, right? And there's a limited supply of players, so certain schools don't pay and others do. There's still going to be good players going to these other schools. However, now, the Title IX argument, it's a good one and an important one. So say you're a school that said, you know what, we're going to pay the basketball and football players, whatever, $40,000 a year, but we're not going to pay the women's track team or the men's track team, by the way, but no, we're not going to pay the women's track team the same because the revenues aren't the same. So then somebody presumably might bring a Title IX case against the school. The thing about Title IX is it's you could argue it either way. One argument is that it's opportunity law. It's a law about opportunity. So you would still have to have equal opportunity to play college sports for men and women. That might not necessarily extend to the extra benefits that might be available to men's football and men's basketball players in an open market economy.
Intriguing right there. Now, the other thing that I saw is the G League is going to start paying their players $125,000 a year to come out. And I was saying, if I'm a Malik Monk or something, why in the world would I want to do a one and done at Kentucky when I could just play for the Hornets G League team? Make the money. If I want to go to school later on, hey, I'll have the nest egg in the bank, and I can go to Arkansas State. He's from Jonesboro, Arkansas. Just choose a guy right there. And I was going to say, do the college basketball programs in the future have to start paying the players, in your opinion, Sean Gregory of Time, to be able to compete with the G League? Because I can't imagine why I wouldn't want to take the money first instead of just going to Duke for a year or something. I can't imagine. Is this inevitable? Does the NCAA, if they're going to compete in this fashion, do they have to pay the players?
I think it is inevitable. Now, the G League is doing something really interesting. Their argument is this might help eradicate one and done a little bit because so many players are going to college for a year and leaving, and that's fine, but it's kind of making a bit of a mockery of education. If you just know you're going to go for a place for a few months, bring in money for the school, increase your draft status in the league. So that's what the G League, that's what the NBA is saying. Hey, we're actually doing the colleges a favor here by giving players that are going to stay at your school an option to go and go play professionally for a year. And at the same time, as you say, it's going to put some upward pressure on wages for college, right? For colleges to compete for players, because they're still going to want these one and done guys. It'll be interesting to see how many people take the deal. It's a real risk reward type situation. Malik Monk, yes. Knows he's going to be a pro. You take the $125,000, you can sign a shoe deal right after high school, so you might be making a lot more in your first year out of high school.
I know the Austin team, Drew. I think they led the league in attendance. G League attendance is going up, but it was 4,000 a game.
Yeah,
and Texas was about 11 or 12,000 a game.
Right. You're not gonna, you can make history. You can win a national championship. That's remember, no offense to the G League, but it's not in the hearts and minds of the public in the same way as college basketball is. So I don't think there's going to be, this is going into effect next year, I don't think there's going to be so if they offer this $125,000 deal to say the top 20 high school kids in the country, I'd be surprised if more than 5 go. That's just my kind of gut. I think it's just starting out, so people don't know what it's going to be like, so some prospects will say, well, I don't want to be one of the first to see how people like it. I'm going to go to Duke instead for a year play for Coach K, because Coach K is a Hall of Famer, and I'm going to be the big man on campus. It's going to be amazing, and then I'll go to my NBA. Now, when you do that, you risk getting hurt. But you're also risking getting hurt your first year out of high school, too. So, playing in the G League, so that risk might be kind of evened out a little bit. It's a fascinating, and it's a really fascinating time in college sports right now. There's all these different things going on, criminal trials, civil trials, initiatives by the G Leagues, professional leagues to kind of mix things up. The next 3 to 5 years, how this all shakes out is amazing. And one thing about this criminal trial, besides the fact that it might help the civil trial, the civil plaintiffs who are arguing that the players should be paid, it might just force the NCAA to look at itself and say, listen, obviously this is going on, there's this underground market, why not bring it above ground and set some limits and try to regulate it so, we're talking about basketball again and not criminal court cases.
Could you see what I think may inevitably happen is that you have the Power 5 conferences breaking off, paying the athletes, and maybe the swimming program does fall away. Maybe that does happen, okay? Let's just, so Tennessee, the SEC, the ACC, they become their own entity, if you will. And yeah, it is kind of professional. The NCAA still exists, but it exists for, say, the East Tennessee states, or you're in New York City, the Long Island Blackbirds, or, Manhattan Jaspers, those guys. And, because I don't think Manhattan is going to be able to pay players the way that, say, Syracuse or St. John's will.
Right.
I just, don't see it. And now I think with the G League, maybe eliminating the one and done. Look, we're seeing Butler play for national championships. We're seeing Loyola of Chicago go to the Final Four. The big conferences try to keep down the mid-majors. They won't play them and all this, but it does seem like there is a bit of more of an even playing field than there has been before between the ETSUs and the Big Ten schools or whatever. Okay, I'm being very long-winded, Sean Gregory, of time. But my question is, could you see maybe where this does happen, where, okay, the NCAA exists for the mid-majors, and then for the Tennessees, the South Carolinas, the Notre Dames, whoever, that's where the college professional ranks are. Could you see that?
I do see that scenario, and my hope in that scenario would be, and it's possible, that as you mentioned, the Power 5 kind of break off, set their own rules, maybe pay players for the NCAA governs the other schools. What I hope happens, and I think would happen because it's such a valuable entity, is that the NCAA would still run March Madness for everybody. That tournament is such a valuable commodity for everybody involved that the NCAA, one thing the NCAA is very good at is putting on March Madness. March Madness brings in over 90% of the NCAA's revenues. They run it well. People love it. Casual fans are into it. College basketball has kind of become a one-month sport at this point for a lot of casual sports fans.
Yeah, I would agree.
And so that could happen, but that doesn't mean that, okay, if Tennessee is playing this Power 5 entity and they're paying players, and then once March Madness come around, and the tournament selection committee happens and all this stuff happens, and they can still get knocked off by 14 seed because you can't pay everybody, right? So even if Tennessee's paying players, there's still going to be plenty of good players to go to the Manhattans and the ETSUs and the Long Islands and all these other schools and the Loyolas they cycle out NBA players, the Loyolas of the world who keep players for 4 years wind up having better teams because there's better chemistry. Basketball's a team game and that kind of thing. So I think you can have the best of both worlds where it's a fair system, but you still have an event where the big guys and the little guys can come together and play, and millions of fans will have office pools, and we all love March. We all will still love March in this new world.
Boy,
I kind of think it can happen, and I hope it will happen.
I think you're being just a wee bit too romantic, because although the mid-majors have made the NCAAs a lot more interesting in the last 10 years, I think. Sean Gregory of Time, I mean, if you've got one entity that's getting paid and another that's going at it for the old college try, I just don't see where that's an even scale. I see where a UNCG could win the Southern Conference this year and make some noise with Francis Alonso and company in the NCAAs. They almost did last year. But if you start doing it the other way, I think the Francis Alonsos are going to be trying to transfer to North Carolina or so and get paid after a while, if you really want to know. But we'll see, and that doesn't necessarily mean that if college athletes are paid in the future, it isn't a more fair system. Of course, you always have, okay, is it going to be capped? Who pays what? You know, all this. We're going to find out sooner or later. And then again, the other thing, Sean Gregory, I would tell you is just what Phil Fulmer told me during Vol Caravan. You know, the players are paid. They're getting an education. That's and there is something to that. But the other thing that I realized is that if Phil Fulmer has to start paying the players, he's taking a pay cut, and I think he might fight not to do that. That's something, yeah.
Yeah, I think so, but that's part of maybe the problem. I don't know what Phil Fulmer's making a year, but can he make a little less? I would argue, and do a job and have a very good living. I would say yes, but you're definitely fighting free market forces at the administrative level, the coaching level. But why can't that flow to the players too, who the fans really come to see?
Sure, there's 24 on one side and 24 on the other, I think. Sean Gregory writes for Time, and he's got a story that I'm going to read later on today about DJ Durkin getting the axe like he should have. And I can't imagine why it took him 24 hours at Maryland to do it, but there you go. Yeah, college athletics. Boy, do they need a commissioner. That's all I'm saying. Do they need somebody that has some power here? Tri-City Sports Now.